Those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We're broadcasting from Detroit, Michigan. We begin today's show in Afghanistan. President Obama says the Afghan war will continue as planned despite his firing of General Stanley McChrystal. McChrystal was fired Wednesday after being summoned by Obama to explain remarks he and his aides made in a Rolling Stone article that disparaged the U.S. president and other senior civilian leaders. On Wednesday, Obama named General David Petraeus head of the U.S. Central Command to replace McChrystal. Petraeus oversaw the so-called surge in Iraq. Like McChrystal, Petraeus is a strong advocate for counterinsurgency warfare. The firing of McChrystal comes at a perilous moment in the Afghan war. Earlier this month, General Petraeus admitted stabilizing Afghanistan would, quote, be harder than Iraq due to the lack of human capital, damage after 30 years of war, illiteracy, lack of infrastructure, and so on, he said. 79 NATO troops have died in Afghanistan so far this month, making it the deadliest month on record for international troops. We don't have the exact figures for Afghan casualties. For more U.S. and NATO troops have died this month than in all of 2002, 2003, or 2004. The Afghan war recently entered its 104th month, making it the longest war in U.S. history, surpassing the Vietnam War. U.S. relations with the Afghan government are also tenuous. Afghan President Hamid Karzai has reportedly lost faith in the U.S. and NATO to prevail and has begun secret negotiations with the Taliban. Meanwhile, the U.S. military is preparing for what could be another public relations disaster. The watchdog website WikiLeaks has said it plans to soon release a classified video showing U.S. troops killing scores of civilians in the Afghan village of Gorani 13 months ago. To talk more about the U.S. war effort, we're joined by three soldiers. They're here in Detroit attending the U.S. Social Forum. Brock McIntosh is an active-duty soldier who served in Afghanistan from November 2008 to August 2009. He's filed for conscientious objector status. Victor Agosto refused to deploy to Afghanistan after serving in Iraq. In August 2009, he was demoted and sentenced to a month in jail. He's a member of Iraq Veterans Against the War. And Camilo Mejia also joins us. He's the first GI who served in Iraq to have publicly resisted the war and was imprisoned for refusing to return for almost a year. He is the former chair of Iraq Veterans Against the War. We welcome you all to Democracy Now! Brock, I'd like to begin with you. When did you return from Afghanistan?
August 2009.
Talk about the firing of General McChrystal and the naming of Petraeus to replace him.
Well, I was sort of shocked that he fired General McChrystal because this counterinsurgency plan is sort of his proposal, and I feel like Obama was digging himself in a hole when he began this counterinsurgency plan because it requires years and years and lots of money. It requires casualties on both sides in Afghanistan and also American lives. And so he was setting himself up for either a protracted war or having to cut the war short and sort of flee Afghanistan in the same way that we fled Vietnam. So I was shocked that he fired General McChrystal. And I feel like General Petraeus, having General Petraeus there, it's not really going to change our strategy very much. And yeah.
You were a big proponent of counterinsurgency when you went to Afghanistan. Why?
Because with counterinsurgency, you measure success not by how many enemies you kill, but by how many civilians you protect. And so to me, it was sort of like Batman warfare, where you're protecting civilians and you're not worried about killing enemies. And so it was something that was really attractive to me.
Why did you change your view?
Well, counterinsurgency has a lot of contradictions and paradoxes in it. And in the counterinsurgency manual itself, it lists 12 paradoxes, and even that list isn't exhaustive enough. But when I talk about counterinsurgency with my fellow soldiers, they talk about not being willing to put their own lives on the line in order to save civilians. It's not something that the regular soldier, I think, is willing to do. And there are several other paradoxes with counterinsurgency, but also what you're trying to do is you're trying to legitimize and support a government in Afghanistan that I believe is irreversibly corrupt, whose foundations is built on drug lords and warlords.
So you've returned from Afghanistan, and you are filing for conscientious objector status, though you're active duty now.
Yeah, I'm in the National Guard, but I'm still on active orders. I drill 1 weekend a month, and I'm currently in the process of filling out the application. But the first question is a pretty hefty question because I'm supposed to describe the nature of my beliefs, which is taking a pretty long time.
Well, I want to ask you further about that, but Victor Agosto, you served in Iraq. You refused to deploy to Afghanistan. What are your feelings about the war today as General McChrystal has been fired and Petraeus has been named to replace him?
Well, I think General Petraeus would be less critical of the Obama administration's plan than General McChrystal was. And I think this shows that there are strong divisions within the administration as to how to proceed. But in reality, there is no good way to conduct this occupation. What needs to happen is an immediate withdrawal of all American troops. The United States needs to pay for the damages, and the Afghan people have to be allowed to determine their own fate.
Why did you refuse to deploy to Afghanistan?
Because the war in Afghanistan has nothing to do with making the American people safer. It's really about projecting American power in Southwest Asia, and I didn't want to be part of that.
Well, I want to ask you about why you originally signed up then, and also we'll be talking with Camilo Mejia, who is well known as the Iraqi officer, as the U.S. officer who fought in Iraq, returned home, and then refused to go back and was imprisoned for almost a year. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report.